and welcome to my YouTube channel, John's Box, and to the fourth in the series of Through Learning to Service, which is based on this book written by ex-head teacher of Park, Philip A. Coggin. And you may remember me, especially if you attended Park School between 1980 and 1983. That's me. I think that's a fourth form photograph. So, without further ado, if this is your first time, by the way, over the past few weeks I've been looking at items in this booklet. For example, the house system. I've already looked at. There was a story also when Park School got into the national headlines. I've chosen 4 topics quite randomly from this booklet to look at today, and the first of these is the Queen's Silver Jubilee Celebrations in 1977. Speaking of the Queen's Silver Jubilee celebration, in my pottery classes at Mountford Manor Junior School, I actually made this pot to commemorate the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977. I know that it has nothing to do with Park School, but I thought I'd mention it. What I'll do then, I'll delve into this booklet and I'll tell you what was written at that time. I'll need to put on my glasses as I don't see as well as I used to. So it's chapter 3, the Queen's Silver Jubilee, and I quote from the book. It says, "By a happy combination of ideas, we were able to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee in 1977 with a ceremony described by several education and training officers from industry and elsewhere as the most impressive school function they had ever attended." Wow, what about that then? And it goes on and on and on. Well, it was mainly to do with the unveiling of 4 portraits painted by a Mr. Spencer, whose 4 children had incidentally attended the Park School. The portraits are of each person who had a house named after them, namely Leonard Cheshire, Lady Mountbatten, Albert Schweitzer, and Fraser. And here's a photo to commemorate that event. And that was actually the culmination of the Queen's Silver Jubilee celebrations. I don't know to what extent those celebrations organised, events rather, that they organised is not known, but there was also a Silver Jubilee appeal, but there's no mention, as I've mentioned, of the events that were celebrated. But one must deduce that the culmination was in fact the unveiling of those 4 portraits, which incidentally the artist in question, Mr. Spencer, used actual photographs to paint them, and he describes himself, or rather he described himself, by the way, as an amateur artist. Well, he did a swell job indeed, I must say. The next topic I'd like to raise in this video is the teaching of English to immigrants. I personally remember that there were a few Vietnamese teenagers around 1981, maybe 3 or 4. They were actually in my 6th form class at that time, and they had commanded the English language quite quickly, in fact, and even bettered some of the native English pupils at mathematics, would you believe? The next topic is another school club or organisation, that is the Christian Union. I'll read the short passage about that, if I can just find it. Bear with me. So, quote, "Like most societies, the Christian Union has had its ups and downs, but active help has always been part of its activities. Refugee teas, fasts instead of feasts, singing carols to old folk and arranging to transport them to services and concerts, making and knitting evenings at which members renovated old Christmas cards, sorted stamps, and made blankets for lepers in Brazil are just some of the activities undertaken over the years." Very nice, though I personally don't have any recollections of this particular group. I guess from further information, this group was involved in many Christmas activities, but more about that in a further episode. And finally, take off my glasses for a minute. I look better with glasses, or perhaps more intelligent and more handsome without, but I'm not being modest. Before I read the extract, I remember 2 school minibuses, and I believe there were only actually 2 ever. The first one is certainly referred to in the booklet, namely a red Ford Transport bus, like the one, similar to the one you'll see here. That bus, which was at the end of its tether in 1981 or 2, but was retained despite its age and unreliability. I remember going on a trip to Savernake Forest with, it was an afternoon field trip, and the driver was a young geography teacher from Scotland named Mrs. Patience. She certainly was patient. I know she had a problem starting the thing. I'm not sure if some of the pupils had to push it. Needless to say, after we'd arrived at Savernake, after the field trip, we wanted to go home. The same things had happened. There was in fact a white minibus which was purchased around 1981, which looked like this one. There was an appeal similarly, or I think that much of that was donated by British Leyland. That was to replace the aging red one, and some pupils were rather perplexed why we hadn't used the new one, the white one, on that particular trip. Maybe just trying to save its legs, yeah. It seems the buses were purchased and raised from funds through various sponsored events, and I'll read you 1 or 2 passages. Here goes. As a result of money-raising activities by parents and pupils, a new 16-seater minibus was acquired for school purposes in 1973. Used mainly for transporting school teams, it nevertheless serves a variety of other purposes, such as school visits of all kinds, etc., etc., etc. When not in use by the school, it is frequently loaned free of charge, sometimes with a number of our own staff as a driver, to other charitable or youth organisations. The appreciation shown by borrowers on these occasions more than repays the trouble of making the minibus available. There's a letter, for example, from a residential home, and then it goes on to say, its use and maintenance are supervised by a committee consisting of Messrs. L.S. Archer, maths teacher, A.J. Buckland, PE teacher, W.J. Davies and Dennis Sutton. And before he left us, there was a Mr. Ian Miller. A group of pupils carry out routine maintenance and cleaning, I hope not sabotage. In 1980, Mr. Ellis Archer could speak enthusiastically of his 8 years association with the minibus, and he goes on to say, 28,000 miles and 8 years later, it is still fulfilling its purpose, and it is due to the pupils and staff who use it with care and consideration that the vehicle is still in such good conditions. I think he was exaggerating a little bit there, because it did have mechanical issues. However, the bus is aging, and it is hoped that when it is decided that the time is ripe to replace it, willing support will once again be forthcoming to help raise the wind. He goes on to finish, and that's what happened. As I mentioned, the new white minibus came along, which was a Leyland model. As the booklet's concerned, I'll just briefly talk about myself. I've got another old exercise book. This time it's French studies. Teacher was Mrs. Campbell, and I'll just show you my scruffy writing from time to time. Here there's some questions about personal background, and on this page, which I selected, things you can ask for at the hotel. For example, say you would like one double room and one single, so it's je voudrais une chambre à deux personnes. That's just my bad French accent. And say you would like a room on the first floor, so je voudrais une chambre au premier étage. I like that one. And one more, is breakfast included? Le petit déjeuner compris? Alright, so there you are. Just a bit of French. I barely remember most of what I had learned. So that's it for today's edition of Through Learning to Service. I'll be back again in a few weeks' time, and I'll randomly choose 4 more clubs and events that have appeared in this booklet. So don't forget to add any comments about this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.